Well, good evening. We're in the series Christianity That Walks. I know a couple of people are saying some other things, but that's the actual thing. That's the actual series. And so, so we're in the book of James. My section is chapter 5, verses 7 through 12. But before anything, I would just like to share a quick story. So about 2 years ago, I went on a mission trip to South America. We went to 6 different countries. We went to Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia. Alexis was actually there. And a funny story, from Paraguay to Bolivia, we were on a bus. And this bus wasn't the best bus. It's kind of very raggedy. There wasn't any AC, and the path from Paraguay to Bolivia wasn't the best path. There was dirt roads, it was very bumpy, a lot of rocks, and it was probably a 26-hour bus ride. And I just remember we started on this bus, and Alexis was actually sitting next to me, and we spent the night on the bus, and I just remember that the bus driver, I'm pretty sure he was drinking, so the bus was just going side to side. At nights, it was hard to breathe because of all the dirt that would come in, and I just remember waking up in the morning, I'm just like, oh God, why am I doing this? And there was a lot of suffering, and there was a lot of patience that was required from each of us. But at the end of the day, once we got to Bolivia, not knowing anything that was really going to happen, there was hundreds of youths that got saved. And if it wasn't for our patience in this bus or our enduring, then that would have never happened. And so many times, whenever we're going through suffering or whenever we're going through a hard difficulty, many times it's hard to go through it because we don't see the vision or we don't see the end goal or the prize. But that's what makes it so worth it. But before I get into the actual word, let's go ahead and pray. Dear God, I thank you for today. I thank you just for all the word, God, that has just been given and just all the seeds that have been planted. Father, I just come before you and ask that your words, Father, would come in to speak, God, and let me not lean on my own understanding, but lean on yours, God. Allow us, Father, to just take this word and apply it in our lives. God, we love you and thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. So as we see, and as many of you guys mentioned, that James is talking and speaking and writing to a people that have been undergoing persecution. And in this time, we see that all the Israelites are just going through a difficult moment of being persecuted for their faith and their beliefs. And I think it's just a privilege that we can come in a class and just preach with liberty and not undergo any consequences, or just not have to worry about somebody coming in and threatening us to kill us just because of our faith. But I think that many times we can take that for granted, just even little moments like this, and having the freedom of speech, which is so important and something that we should never take for granted, but be grateful in all times. And so James is writing to these people that are undergoing so much persecution and suffering, and it's not easy to go through suffering. It's not easy to go through pain. It's not easy to go through difficult trials. And so my question to you is, how do you react to suffering? What is it that you go to? What is it that you run to? Or what is it that you necessarily just don't want to face? Is it fear? Is it just running away from certain situation? Is it just ignoring the whole fact of suffering? What is it? And in verse 7, we see a clear call to patience. As James says in verse 7, it says, "Therefore, brothers, be patient until the Lord's is coming. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth and is patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains." And James doesn't only call us to have patience in suffering, but he gives us a vision. He gives us something to hope in, what it is, it's the coming of the Lord. You see, as Christians, many times we could look forward to our wedding date. We could look forward to finishing this class. We could look forward to graduating. But in reality, what should we be waiting as humans, as Christians? And that's the second coming of God. At the end of the day, we're only here for a short amount of time. But where are we going to be in eternity? And that's what really matters. And so, again, I want to focus a little bit on patience and the definition of patience. And I looked it up, and dictionary.com says this. Patience is the bearing of provocation, of annoyance, of misfortune, or pain. But it says patience is this. It's without complaint, without loss of temper, irritation, or the like. And so how many times do we complain when we suffer? How many times do we lose our temper? How many times do we get irritated? And so James gives a good example of a farmer that waits, that depicts patience, and it says that the farmer waits for the precious fruit. He waits, and the farmer understands that there's going to be a time where we're just going to have to depend on God. We're just going to have to wait, because it's easy just to do our part, but it's very hard just to wait for God and wait in that time. And an example that I had was a woman when she's about to give birth. Like I mentioned before, I was a fat baby, so I felt bad for my mom. Whenever she had me, it probably hurt her. But at the same time, I believe, even though through all the suffering that my mom went and having me, or just however many times I kicked or woke her up at night, she understood the end goal. She understood that at the end of it all, I'm going to have my baby. I'm going to have my son to look forward to. And in verse 8 it says, "You also must be patient as well. Strengthen your hearts, because the Lord's coming is near." Once again, the Lord is coming near. He's right there. And in this time, they believed that Jesus was coming. They in a sense, thought the world was going to end any time. And so they were understanding that, hey, we need to be prepared. There's a time, and the time is coming, that Jesus is going to come back, and it's very near. So we go on into verse 9, and it says, "Brothers, do not complain about one another, so that you will not be judged. Look, the judge stands at the door." Again, look, the judge stands at the door is another indication that, hey, Jesus is near. Hey, the second coming is about to come. So be careful in how you act. Be careful in the things that you say. Be careful of your conduct. How is your character? Don't speak bad about people, because it's going to come back on you. Be careful, just even with the words that you say. We heard about taming the tongue and how powerful it is. And just even the littlest words. So be careful about what you say. Be careful of how you're saying certain things. And we go on into verse 10 and 11. It says, "Brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the Lord's name as an example of suffering and patience. See, we count as blessed those who have endured. You have heard of Job's endurance and have seen the outcome from the Lord. The Lord is very compassionate and merciful." And so I kind of just want to stay here for a little bit and kind of just really focus in on the prophets and how they undergo much suffering. We see the prophet Isaiah, the prophet of Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. And they faced death. They faced just persecution to the max, and even to the point where they doubted. Even to the point where he would just say, "God, just take me right now." And so we have to be very careful just in those moments to endure, to continue. And the perfect example of endurance in the Old Testament is Job. And understanding that Job was a man of righteousness, that Job was, in other words, living a perfect life. But yet he went through so many things, but yet never once profaned against God. He never once talked bad about him. And I think that just shows so much character and understanding that Job didn't have it all figured out. I mean, we still don't even understand today why Job went through all those things, but yet he understood who his God was. And going on to the last verse, sorry, I'm sick, so I kind of lose my train of thought. Now verse 12, it says, "Now above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you won't fall under judgment." And I just want to kind of just share another story of myself and the power of your yes and no. And so when I was probably about 4 years old, I was drawing a house on my little writing pad. And at the time, my mom was cooking. So she was in the kitchen and I was in the living room. And so I'm drawing, you know, my little house with a little door with some windows and a roof. And I just remember going to my mom and I was like, Mom, can I paint the house? And she's like, yeah, you can paint the house. I'm like, Mom, I can paint this house? And she's like, yes, you can paint the house. And I'm like, what? Okay. So I get my crayons, and at that time too I had like loose glue stamps. So I get my crayons, and in my house we had like a whole bunch of walls, and they were white like this. And I just remember just boom, 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 stamping every wall with my thing. And in the matter of a minute, I painted the whole house.
Oh my.
And my mom's like, where did this kid go? So she comes out and she just sees the whole house painted. And I knew, I'm like, oh man, what did I do? But I said, but Mom, you told me I could paint the house. You said I could do it. And she said, yeah, I know. But and my brothers, then I had to clean it. I couldn't even clean the house because of how young I was. But how, it's crazy how much authority and power we have in our yes and no, and what that could lead to so many times, just giving authority to certain things that maybe we shouldn't give in our lives. And we find ourselves in troubles, we find ourselves in things that we suffer just because of a simple yes that we said and not understanding the fullness of everything. And so three things that I kind of want to leave you with undergoing suffering. The first thing is pray for patience. We see that the perfect example is David and all the suffering he went through with Saul. But we see in the book of Psalms how David would just plead to God and say, God, help me. He was real with himself and he knew that he needed help from God. So whenever you're going through a difficult time, let the first thing be prayer. The second thing is don't grumble. Don't judge. It's easy to fall apart in suffering. It's easy to let go of everything that we have or everything that we've learned. And in a matter of seconds, we could lose it all just by judging and allowing all bitterness to get into us. And the third thing is let your yes be yes and your no be no. Remember, you have authority. God is full of compassion and he knows what's best for us. And one thing my brother always says to me, and something that we always say to each other is, God is good all the time, and all the time, God is good. Thank you.